There are stories going round the oil circle here in Nigeria that the President Bola Tinubu, is asking that revenues from crude oil sales from the NNPCL be moved to the central bank, waiting for some authority to speak on this, but it's becoming common knowledge around here in the news circle that this is a directive. We've seen some reactions from government officials that this might bring more transparency if it is confirmed that this is true. This might bring some transparency in the area of managing the proceeds and revenue of oil. Of course, we await the NNPCL or the Central Bank of Nigeria to confirm this story. And talking about the NNPCL, an interesting one, the Nigerian National Petroleum Company Limited. We know that they did not remit any funds to the Federation account in 2022, and they said because of the payment of subsidy. We know when subsidy was removed on the PMS. That was revealed by the Chief Financial Officer of NNPCL. Other matters arising now. There you see their financials for 16 months, a 16-month statement that they shared with members of the public. And we see that it's for the group and then for the company. Of course, NNPCL is now a company of its own. And because they have investments, they have some acquisitions, so they also have the group. So let's not just stop with these numbers that you see. We're going to delve into what those numbers actually mean and some of the implication of those numbers that we see right there. Of course, I think one of the first thing that jumps out at you is it's a 16-month statement of financials. Meanwhile, normally we'd see 12 months or at least 6 months. But let's get more on this with Mr. Gbolahan Olojede. He's a financial expert, joins us virtually from Lagos. Mr. Olojede, good afternoon. Thank you for your time.
Yeah, good afternoon. Nice to be here.
Good to have you. So the first thing would be, I mean, out of curiosity, why do you think that the NNPCL shared a 16-month statement? Normally we would see 6 months, half a year, or we would see a quarter, or we would see at least, or at most, a year. That's 12 months.
Well, that may be something to do with the birth of NNPC Limited itself. NNPC Limited is a creation of the law, the PIA, and I think the PIA was signed into law in August 2021, thereabout. So it is probably making an account starting from the day it was born as an entity up until the end of 2022. That's what it looks like.
And then, well, of course, we do not have numbers to compare with since this is their birth year up until date.
Exactly.
So we do not have.
That's the reason why there will not be comparative. I mean, you can't have activities before you were born.
Exactly. So we have giants like Saudi Aramco doing so well. They churn out about 9 million barrels. Meanwhile, here we are struggling with 1 million barrels. We can't even hit our OPEC. You know, when you want to compare both, is it an unfair comparison to put the NNPCL side by side with, you know, corporations like Saudi Aramco?
Well, in a way, it might be unfair, and that is because Saudi Aramco has gotten its acts together way back. Nobody is in any creeks in Saudi Arabia trying to prevent stealing of crude or anything. The technology, the transparency have been there forever. It has been accountable for several years. Unlike NNPC is just trying to get into that space of improved transparency, is trying to become a commercially viable entity, is trying to become an entity that is accountable. There have been years in the past when for several years NNPC accounts were not audited. So that's why, you know, you cannot place that NNPC as it used to be beside an entity like Saudi Aramco, which has been known for transparency, for accountability for several years.
Another thing that's missing in that statement that we see would be a sign of diversification of revenue. We know that, for instance, the NNPCL now has a 20% stake in Dangote. We know it has acquired but it's not reflected in that statement, except I missed it. I mean, you guys are the financial experts.
Yeah, it depends on what vehicle was used for the acquisition. I'm not so sure, because if the NNPC Limited was the vehicle that acquired the stake, 100% it must show up on the financials. But unless we know exactly what entity, on whose book is the acquisition sitting, we might not be able to make any judgment call there. But the fact that it is not sitting on the books of NNPCL shows that NNPCL was not the acquisition vehicle for the stake in the refinery.
So how do we differentiate it now? Because, I mean, to an average Nigerian, when we say NNPC owns 20% of Dangote, for instance, then the expectations that should reflect in the value of the company, at least, or in the group, since they have now shared it. And then when you have retailers like O&O also acquired by it, how do we differentiate it?
Well, those are some of the calls that we should make to the to NNPC, because those are very important notes and contents in itself in terms of numbers for an account of NNPC. If NNPC is a vehicle for that acquisition, that is very, very important. For example, let's say it was Federal Ministry of Finance or Federal Ministry of Finance Incorporated. I'm just saying, that was used as a vehicle for holding that stake for the people of Nigeria, then it will not show up on NNPC's books. That is natural. So it is for us to, as we are asking now, then NNPC might make a comment on two about that, as to why the expectation by Nigerians that stake should be showing up on his book, but it's not showing up, so they can tell us why it is not showing up.
And then we've been expecting the company to list since June last year. A lot of Nigerians are hoping at least to make some money from the national crude. What do you think is holding that move?
I think it's a bit early in the day to list. Apart from the fact that listing in itself requires certain minimum requirement to be met, the other important fact is that the entity does not have enough what I will call consistency of performance that is strong enough for it to list. Well, it may be argued that since it has an account of up to 5 years, maybe whoever is working on the valuation and taking it to the market can dwell on that as a basis for taking it to the market. But you see, the success of coming to the market will ride on the back of consistency of positive performance, and that is what will make it very successful. So if you ask me as an individual, I would love to see an NNPC Limited that will still run further for a couple of years and then come to the market, so that we have an history, an established history of consistent performance over a number of years that can form a basis for the attractiveness on the exchange. Now, if you look at one of the years in the past, I'm trying to remember which year in particular now, the profit that it posted was not even from its operation. It was from an extraordinary source. Now, extraordinary source does not keep repeating itself. So if I'm analyzing that kind of a year, I would discount it, because he made money. He was able to make profit only from an extraordinary source, not from its own core operations. What I would love to see is a history of consistent profitability from its core operations over a period of time. That will, induce attractiveness when it comes to the market.
How long do you think that can take to convince someone like you of the consistency, in operations?
I would like to see at least another 2 years. I would like to see 2 years more of consistency and profitability.
Okay, so now we see that there was no remittance for 2022 because they say of subsidy. Now, subsidy has been removed, let's say since June, maybe May 29, end of May to June. What do you expect now that they say they are not being burdened down with the payment of subsidy? Because, of course, we hear that there's still subsidy somewhere. So what do you expect, from their records, from remittances and all of that for the period now that subsidy has been removed?
I think remittances has gone up, and it has reflected in how the distribution to the various tiers of government from FAC account has swelled up dramatically. The monthly distribution from FAC has gone up significantly. So this might or must have been accounted for by the fact that NNPC had gone back to a season when it is now remitting back to the Federation account. It's commendable though. But then I think more transparency is still required, which is why for me, I'm delighted to hear about certain news. I don't know whether it has been confirmed now, asking NNPC the proceeds to come to CBN, rather than a situation in which NNPC has the proceed, meet his own obligation from the proceed, and remit the balance. So transparency will be improved if all the proceed in the first instance come first to the CBN. So we know exactly what is going out and where it is going to. It is easier to monitor financials before expenses are already consummated than to, if it has been spent, you can easily justify. But let's see it before it is even spent. That is a better level of transparency. I hope it is true.
Yeah, well, we're looking forward to either refuting or confirming of that story from either the Central Bank of Nigeria, the federal government represented by obviously the presidency, or the NNPCL. But thank you so much, Mr. Agbola Olojade, financial expert, for your thoughts this afternoon.
Yeah, thanks for having me.